Hello and welcome to this video. My name is Tasin Siddiqui, and in this video I would like to talk about negotiations. Recently I've been interested in the topic of negotiations, and I have been reading a few books on negotiations, and I have noted a few points that are very relevant when it comes to negotiation and when it comes to stir the conversation, the negotiation in a certain direction. Mind you, negotiation would not always give you the results that you want, but these are a few points that you can sort of use as a framework that might help you be a better negotiator. So without wasting much time, let me start off with the first point. So the first point when going into a negotiation is to have the right mindset, right? What I mean by that is, basically you need to keep four things in mind. Yeah, the interests, constraints, alternatives, and perspective. Interests. So basically, we need to be aware of the interests of the counterparty. What exactly does the counterparty want from this negotiation? We might also want to be aware of the constraints of our, counterparty, what they can offer us in the negotiation, and what are some constraints that, we cannot negotiate on. We might want to know the alternatives. So basically, when we go into a professional negotiation, the party might not just be negotiating with us, but there might be other alternatives in the market. And we might to do the market research to understand who basically are these other alternatives and what is the value that they are providing. We should also look into the negotiation from a different perspective. When I say a different perspective, I mean we should be in a position to look at the negotiation from our counterparty point of view. So that would be the right mindset for negotiation. The second thing that you can look into or keep in mind when going into a negotiation is to understand, or rather discuss about the process before the substance. So what I mean by that is you might want to negotiate the process in which you want to carry out the negotiation before you negotiate the substance. So what I mean by that is you might want to understand who are the stakeholders, how is the decision made in your organization, who are the key people, and you might want to understand and structure your case accordingly before you go into the conversation with the deal. You might also want to understand how long does a negotiation like this take in the parties' organization. And you might also want to gain some experience of how long and what the process looked like for a deal that you are putting across, a similar deal that was done before. The third thing that you might want to keep in mind is you want to stop arguing about what each side wants. So basically, you need to keep in mind that each party has, certain interests, right? And you might want to negotiate on the interests and not the position, right? We'll talk about this point further so that it becomes a little more clear, but for the sake of completion, let me go to the other points. So another thing that you might want to keep in mind when negotiating is you want to make sure your concessions are rewarded and not exploited. So what I mean is at times, in a negotiation, you might want to give a concession to the counterparty so that they, come to the deal faster. And you might want to present it in a way that, your concessions are not looked across from the other side as being of you being in a weaker position. Rather, you want them to understand that this person really wants the deal to get done and they want to offer a concession, right? So there is a very fine line where you want to not be looked on as being weak, rather somebody who is mature and is willing to do, make compromises to get the deal done. The next thing that you might want to keep in mind before you go into a negotiation is that you just don't want to prepare the arguments of the deal, right? You want to also prepare the audience. So what I mean by that is, once you know something, you lose the ability to understand what it feels like to not know the subject, right? So basically, remember that the audience coming across from the other side, they might be in this argument for the very first time. And they might not have the knowledge that you have when going into this negotiation. So you have to give them that benefit of doubt and rather prepare the audience, with the information that you have. Well, you don't want to give all your, chips, but you want to prepare the audience before you negotiate. One more thing that you might want to keep in mind is, at times you might find yourself in a situation where you feel like you're negotiating with irrational people, right? And how do you deal with irrational people? Well, the first thing that, I must tell you is that very rarely do people act irrationally. So what I mean by that is, so let me first define what rationality and irrationality, means here before I delve further into the topic. So I would call a person irrational when he or she makes a decision consciously that is against their self-interest, right? So you might be in a deal where you think that this person seems completely irrational. They care about things that, make no sense. Mind you, in this situation, you need to understand that this person might not be irrational, rather their value system is a little, bent, or they're following a different model than you are. So what I mean is, at times you might find, people negotiating, on a certain principle that they are not willing to compromise, and it has nothing to do with, money or, the business dealing. So you might want to find out what exactly is the person thinking, right? And then you might want to, negotiate keeping that in mind. Sometimes it may be that the person simply seems irrational, but rather he or she has a certain, pride, dignity, ego, whatever you call it, that they do not want to, lose in the deal. Yeah? So you might just want to cater to that as well. And there are a lot of people in positions of power, who might not, get the deal done just because of pride. So keep that in mind. All right. Another thing that you might want to keep in mind when going into a negotiation is why and how you can interpret certain demands as opportunities in the negotiation. So what I mean by this is, let's say the other party makes a demand, and you might think that this is bullying. This is not the right time to be making such demands, that we are already, in the deal, so deep into the deal. Don't ever get annoyed and frustrated, right? Rather, look at these demands as opportunities. So let me give you an example. So there was this one time, a real estate company was doing a deal with a buyer. Okay, this buyer was buying a lot of bulk, properties in bulk from this real estate agent, the construction company. So they were going through the deal, and then very far into the deal, the buyer, makes a demand to the construction company and says that, hey, if you, let's say, delay the property construction, you know, you will have to pay a penalty of such and such percentage every month. And mind you, they were at the final stage of the deal, and the construction company was kind of annoyed. The CEO sat with its board, and they were like really frustrated at the fact that such demands have come up at the very end when we were almost about to close the deal. And what should we do? They thought of it as being immoral and bullying. But then the executive committee, fortunately, they came up with the idea, and they looked at this demand as an opportunity, and rather than backing off the deal, they accepted the demand, and they made like a statement to them that say, hey, every month that we delay by, we are going to pay this X amount of percentage to you, but every month that we complete the construction before the assigned date. So let's say it was supposed to be, the handover was supposed to be in June, but let's say we give you the keys in May, April. Every month before that, however many months we do before that, you would have to pay us a premium. So we are accepting to pay you a premium if we do the delay. But in order for us to accept this demand of yours, you would have to pay us this amount of percentage, which is a higher percentage than the one that you requested us, every day that we complete the construction before the promised date. And this was a very strategic and wise move, because, and how they came up with this was the executive committee realized that to the customer, punctuality is a constraint. They want to be punctual, otherwise they might be losing money or customers, whatever. So punctuality is very important to the counterparty, and in order to satisfy them with the fact that, hey, we are going to be punctual, and present like a proof for that, they made this statement that they will pay if they do the construction before the promised time. And obviously the customer was satisfied, because they understood that they would complete the construction on time, and so everybody was happy and the deal was done. So you might want to interpret demands of the counterparty as opportunities. Next thing that you might want to keep in mind when going into a negotiation is, at times, how do you respond to the customer when the customer says that your price is too high? You never apologize for your price being too high, right? Because you believe that the value that you bring to the table justifies the price. So whenever the customer says something like, a different competitor is offering at a similar product at 20% less cost, why are you charging a premium? You never say that we are going to reduce the price. You never do that. You say that, we value our product, and this is what goes into, and this is the material that we are using. This is a testimonial of all the customers who have bought our product. We think that the value that we are providing justifies the price, and there are people who are willing to pay the price. So this is the offer that we have to offer. This is what you say. All right, there are some other things, but we'll discuss that in other videos, because this one is becoming too long. So yeah, thank you for staying till the end if you were there, and please keep supporting me in making such videos if you did find value. So have a nice day, and bye.